In today's video, I'm going to be installing a Techtonics fabricated exhaust system with a Magnaflow muffler on my 2007 Beetle. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today's video, as mentioned earlier, is going to be still working on the Beetle project. In the last video about this project, we were able to get the transmission back to working order and working properly. I've been continuing to drive it, and everything is working out really well. Now in this video, we're going to be working on the exhaust, and really the exhaust and the transmission were the main two things that made this Beetle so affordable, or at least not as appetizing for most buyers to jump into, because the exhaust had a major leak in it and the transmission had some major issues going on. The exhaust, after getting under the car and looking at it, the reason why there was a major leak in it was right in the downpipe. So the flex pipe area where there's that metal mesh was completely rusted apart, and no possible way to save it. The other reason I needed to replace the exhaust was due to the fact that the entire exhaust was pretty rusted out. It looks as though this car did sit for a while or sit on grass, because the underbody is kind of rusty and in certain areas. But the exhaust hangers, for the most part, there were only two still holding it on, and the exhaust was wobbling back and forth, and in turns you would hear it knocking. So this was a good opportunity to go ahead and replace the entire exhaust with something that was going to sound a little bit better as well. So that I was really excited about. I decided to go with a Techtonics exhaust and fabricated exhaust at 2.5 inches, and I went with the aluminized one versus a stainless steel one to save on costs a little bit, because trying to be budget conscious with this build a little bit and want to spend a little bit more money to make it more off-roady, if you will. And the other part was, the stainless steel exhaust has a different tone. It's generally a little bit louder, and I'm not necessarily going for that with this car, at least at this point. Before we jump into the install, this would be a good time to mention that we were able to pick up this exhaust through our good friends with B2B Fab, who helped place this order for us with Techtonics. If you didn't know, B2B Fab, obviously they're fabrication specialists and do a ton of awesome lift kits and parts and even custom fabrication that I've learned about when talking with the team, but also they are a retailer of different parts and different companies. So Techtonics is one of their suppliers. There's a ton of different parts on their site, so go check it out. Let's jump into the install. So first, to try and make this job a little bit easier, I grabbed some penetrating lubricant and sprayed it on each of the bolts and oxygen sensors that I'd need to remove, and let that sit for a little bit of time. After trying to remove the oxygen sensor, I decided to apply just a little bit of heat to it to get that metal to expand a little bit, and that made pulling the oxygen sensor out much easier. So I decided to start the exhaust removal right after the catalytic converter, because there is an exhaust sleeve there, which makes for an easy removal point. So first I loosened up that sleeve. Then I moved over to the downpipe hanger and started to work on that and removing the two bolts that hold that in place. These were severely rusted in, and that whole bracket really needs to be replaced. I did not do that on this job right now, but we'll probably order one of those in the near future. As you can see, I had to pull out the vice grips to try and get a hold of the top of that bolt, and then eventually it was just so locked in place I decided to cut it off and replace the bolt. Now, since I was fortunate enough to have a completely rusted out downpipe, I was able to remove most of it from that flex pipe area to give myself a little bit more working room to disconnect the downpipe from the exhaust manifold. So once you remove those 4 nuts, you can go ahead and pull that off with a little bit of force, and then don't forget to remove the exhaust gasket. Then I moved to the rear of the vehicle, where I started to remove right after the resonator and make a cut there. I probably ended up making a second cut a little closer to the axle as well, and you'll need to do that to remove this exhaust and get it over that axle at that bend. The final step to completely remove this exhaust is to remove the muffler, and in my case there was only one hanger left holding that muffler in place, so I removed that and pulled it out. So here's a side-by-side of the new Techtonics exhaust versus the old exhaust. The Techtonics exhaust is all made up of 2.5-inch piping, made it up to a Magnaflow muffler. I chose to do the revealed tip, or the drop down, so it'll stick out below the bumper so I can weld on a new muffler tip. And then I used a Walker catted down pipe. I was able to pick up, I think, from Amazon actually. Now for this exhaust install, I started by installing the downpipe, placing a new exhaust gasket that I picked up at FCP Euro, and some brand new copper nuts, and got that tightened and locked into place. Then I moved on to the downpipe exhaust hanger and got those bolts in place. In order to install the mid-pipe and resonator section, you got to remove the center brace, as there's actually an exhaust mounting point built right into it. As you can see, the exhaust was so rusted out that the actual mounting point, or the hanger that was originally there, was just stuck inside this mounting point, not even connected to the old exhaust anymore. So first I started by removing that. I also did a little correction on these as well, as they were pretty bent up, so I got those to sit straighter, bolted them back in, and installed the mounting point that came with the Techtonics exhaust. Then I slid the mid-pipe and resonator over that axle, and then as I was lifting the brace into place, I put it into the mounting point so that way I'd be able to connect it. I set a couple of the screws in the brace, and then was able to connect the downpipe to the mid-pipe using that sleeve, and then I went back up and tightened up all the fasteners for the brace. Once the brace was fastened securely, I went through and connected the sleeve from the downpipe to the mid-pipe. An important note for me here was I was connecting everything, but leaving everything pretty loose at this point so I could come back and adjust it for spacing at a later time. Alright, now my camera work here is a little bit erratic and it's hard to tell exactly where I'm at, but I'm just on the other side of the axle now, and I'm starting by getting the muffler into place on one of the exhaust muffler hanging points. I also inserted and placed the rearmost exhaust hanger as well to hold the muffler up, with a lot of spacing work to still figure out and get done, and have the alignment be just right. But it helped me get that muffler in place for the connection points for the mid-pipe coming over the axle, and then also just making sure that I had clearance on that drop tip for the exhaust. Now this is the rearmost exhaust hanger, and here I'm showing you how you can put the locking mechanism on it to make sure that it won't slide out. These exhaust hangers don't have any sort of mushrooming on the end to keep them in place like a OEM exhaust does, so it uses this little spring clip as well as a hose clamp. So that was a super fast installation of this exhaust. It went in perfectly. The sizing and measurements were all perfect for this Beetle. It should also work with a lot of the Mark IV platform. So totally am recommending this from Techtonics. Now let's take a listen to how it actually sounds. I think it sounds awesome so far, especially for a little Beetle. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Again, I went with the Techtonics 2.5-inch exhaust. It's the aluminized, and I went with the Magnaflow muffler. You can also get it with a Borla muffler as well, and I just like the way the Magnaflow sounded a little bit better based on clips I saw online. It's all personal preference. Again, hit up B2B Fab for any of your needs, specifically with a lot of the VW product and MQB platform. And yeah, the next videos we have coming up are going to be probably based on the Tiguan project, so stay tuned for those. We have some performance mods as well as a new air intake, so look out for that. And finally, if you liked this video or you found it helpful, give it a like, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you all soon.